October 12, 1940. The morning sun cuts through autumn mist at Château de Milandes in southwestern France. Josephine Baker watches two Wehrmacht staff cars roll up her gravel drive. In the basement below, four French resistance fighters crouching darkness, breathing shallow, hands gripping concealed weapons. The Germans have come to search the property. Baker adjusts the silk scarf at her throat and checks her reflection. Her famous smile, the one that charmed Paris and filled theaters from Berlin to Buenos Aires, will have to work one more time. But this performance isn't for applause. It's for survival. If the Nazis discover the men hiding below, everyone dies today. Captain Heinrich Müller steps from the lead vehicle, his boots crunching on gravel. He's investigating reports that the famous American entertainer is sheltering enemies of the Reich. His superiors in Paris find the allegation ridiculous. Josephine Baker, the woman who danced in a banana skirt at the Folies Bergère, a spy, absurd. But orders are orders, and Müller has learned not to question the Gestapo's intelligence sources, no matter how unlikely. What Müller doesn't know is that the world's most famous black entertainer has been operating as a French intelligence asset since September 30th, 1939. Hidden in her sheet music and costumes are secrets that will help win the war. Baker descends the grand staircase as the German officers enter her chateau. She's wearing an elegant day dress, pearls at her throat, every inch the international star. Müller clicks his heels and introduces himself in formal French. Madame Baker, we have received reports of suspicious activities at this property. We must conduct a thorough search. Of course, Captain. Baker's voice carries the warm musicality that captivated audiences worldwide. But first, you must see my costume collection. I just returned from performing for our troops in North Africa. She gestures toward the drawing room, her movements graceful and commanding. Would you gentlemen care for champagne? It's vintage Dom Perignon, quite rare these days. The officers exchange glances. This isn't the fearful response they expected from someone harboring enemies of the Reich. Baker leads them through room after room, narrating theatrical anecdotes, showing off gowns and headdresses, signing autographs. Her performance is masterful. The famous Josephine Baker, beloved by millions, could never be a spy. The very idea seems preposterous. After 2 hours of champagne and celebrity charm, Müller and his men depart empty-handed. They never searched the basement. Baker watches their cars disappear down the drive, then allows herself one shaking breath before descending to release the hidden fighters. Tonight, they'll continue their journey to join Free French forces in Africa. Tomorrow, she'll transmit intelligence about German troop movements she overheard at last week's diplomatic reception. To understand how the most photographed woman in the world became one of World War II's most effective spies, you have to go back to where it all began. Not in the glittering theaters of Paris, but in the rat-infested tenements of St. Louis, Missouri, where a girl named Freda Josephine MacDonald learned that survival required performance. On June 3, 1906, Josephine grew up in crushing poverty that left permanent scars. Her family lived in cardboard shacks. She scrounged food from garbage cans. At age 8, she was hired out to a white woman who beat her and forced her hands into boiling water as punishment. By 13, she'd married and divorced, desperate for any escape from the slums. America in the early 1900s wasn't just poor for black families. It was deliberately, systematically cruel. Jim Crow laws mandated segregation in every aspect of life. Josephine couldn't sit at lunch counters, use public restrooms, or ride in train cars with white passengers. The message was clear and constant. You are less than human. You do not belong. But Josephine discovered something powerful. When she performed, dancing and clowning with traveling shows, white audiences laughed and applauded. On stage, for those brief moments, the rules changed. performance became both survival tool and path to freedom. At 19, she left America forever, sailing to Paris with a black musical revue called La Rêve Nègre. Paris in 1925 was experiencing Jazz Age fever, fascinated by American black culture while remaining largely ignorant of American racism. When Josephine Baker exploded onto the stage of the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées on October 2, 1925, wearing little more than feathers and a dazzling smile, she shocked and thrilled the city. Her performance was primal, athletic, uninhibited. Parisians had never seen anything like her. Within months, Baker became the highest-paid entertainer in Europe. She performed at the Folies Bergère in her now iconic banana skirt, just 16 bananas on a string around her hips. She walked her pet cheetah, Chiquita, through Paris streets on a diamond-studded leash. She received thousands of love letters weekly, starred in films, launched perfumes and fashion lines. But the fame wasn't what mattered most to Josephine. What transformed her life was something simple and profound. In Paris, she could sit anywhere. She could dine at any restaurant, stay at any hotel, walk through any door without facing hatred. For the first time in her life, Josephine Baker experienced freedom. She would never forget what France gave her. In 1937, she married Jean Léon, a Jewish French industrialist, and became a French citizen. France represented everything America had denied her: liberty, equality, fraternity. These weren't just words on monuments, they were her daily reality. She could be an artist, a person, a human being without the suffocating weight of American racism crushing every moment. By the late 1930s, Baker's European tours brought her face to face with rising fascism. In Vienna, protesters called her a black devil and lined the streets in hostility. In Germany, Nazi stormtroopers threw ammonia bombs at her performances. Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels featured her photograph on leaflets condemning decadent artists. The message was clear. To the Nazis, Josephine Baker represented everything they wanted to destroy. She was black, successful, married to a Jewish man, openly bisexual, representing cultural freedom and artistic expression. The Nazis didn't just dislike her. They featured her in their exhibitions of degenerate art. They threatened her life. They made clear that if their ideology triumphed, people like Josephine Baker would not exist. She understood exactly what was at stake when war came. September 3, 1939. France declares war on Germany. Within days, Captain Jacques Aptet of the 2e Bureau, French military intelligence, receives an unexpected introduction. Daniel Marouani insists Aptet meet with Josephine Baker. She desperately wants to serve France in the war effort. She's demanding to help, threatening to cause a scene if refused. Aptet is initially skeptical. As chief of counter-espionage in Paris, he worries about another Mata Hari, the World War I double agent whose betrayal remains fresh in French military memory. Moreover, recruiting a famous performer seems counterintuitive. Spies need anonymity, not celebrity. But Marouani is insistent, and Aptet agrees to one meeting, just to hear her out. When they meet in September 1939, Baker's passion stuns him. She doesn't want glory or adventure. She wants to repay a debt. France made me what I am, she tells Aptet, her voice intense. I will be eternally grateful. The people of Paris have given me everything, especially their hearts. I gave them mine. I am ready, Captain, to give them my life. She raises her champagne glass. To France. According to Aptet's 1948 memoir, he recognized something in that moment. This wasn't a thrill-seeker or a publicity stunt. This was a woman who understood what she owed and what she was willing to sacrifice. Baker is immediately registered as an honorable correspondent, a civilian intelligence asset. She will never receive payment, operating instead from pure patriotism. Her first assignment comes within a week. determine whether Benito Mussolini plans to form a pact with Hitler against France. Baker attends receptions at the Italian embassy, leveraging friendships with Italian diplomats cultivated during her pre-war tours of Italy. She mingles at parties, listens to conversations, asks seemingly innocent questions. Within 2 weeks, she confirms Italian intentions. Her second major assignment targets Japan. Using her close friendship with the wife of Japan's ambassador to France, Baker confirms that Japan intends to ally with Germany. This intelligence, providing early warning of Axis alliance formation, flows directly to French General Staff and British MI6. The famous entertainer is proving surprisingly effective at gathering strategic intelligence that diplomats and military attachés cannot obtain. Baker's methods are audacious. She attends diplomatic functions at the Italian, Japanese, and Portuguese embassies. She works nightclubs and café society events where German, Italian, and Japanese officials gather. People talk freely around her because they cannot imagine Josephine Baker, the glamorous entertainer, would be interested in military or political matters. They see a performer. She sees and hears everything. She writes notes on the palms of her hands and on her arms under her sleeves, making detailed observations and playing sight. When Apte warns her of the dangers, she laughs. "Oh, nobody would think I'm a spy. That's my advantage." Captain Apte begins using invisible ink to write sensitive information onto Baker's musical scores. The intelligence flows to British Secret Intelligence Service through Commander Wilfred Dunderdale, the MI6 officer who would later inspire Ian Fleming's James Bond. To provide cover for intelligence activities, Baker joins the Infirmière Pilote Secouriste de l'Air, Air Force Auxiliary Nursing Pilots. As a licensed pilot who earned her wings in 1936, this provides legitimate military connection. She also conducts genuine humanitarian work, managing a refugee reception center at Paris's Gare du Nord station at her own expense, performing tours on the Maginot Line. May 19, 40. Germany invades France. The lightning advance of German forces overwhelms French defenses within weeks. In early June, as German troops close on Paris, Apte insists Baker evacuate. She loads her possessions, including a gold piano and a bed once owned by Marie Antoinette, into vans and flees to Château des Milandes in Dordogne, southwestern France. Paris falls on June 14th. France signs an armistice on June 22, 1940. The country is divided. Germany occupies the northern zones and the Atlantic coast. The collaborationist Vichy regime controls the south, theoretically independent but actually subservient to Nazi demands. Baker's Château sits in the Vichy zone, technically unoccupied but crawling with German intelligence agents and collaborationist police hunting resistance members. At her chateau, Baker transforms the estate into a resistance operations base. She shelters refugees fleeing the Nazis. She houses resistance fighters in her basement. She caches weapons for the underground. She reportedly installs a powerful radio transmitter in one of the towers to communicate with London. The chateau becomes a transit point for Free French Forces members heading to Africa to join de Gaulle. But someone talks. In October 1940, Nazi officers arrive to search the property, while Baker is actively hiding resistance fighters in the basement. This is the moment described at the beginning of this story. The moment where Josephine Baker's performance skills save lives. She charms the German officers during their inspection, deflecting suspicions through celebrity mystique and theatrical performance. They depart without discovering the hidden fighters. The close call convinces Apte that Baker needs to leave France. Her chateau is compromised. German intelligence suspects her activities. If they return with authorization to conduct a thorough search, Baker will face execution. As a black woman in interracial marriage to a Jewish man, caught spying, she'll be guillotined face up, the penalty for espionage. They need a reason for her to leave France legally. The solution is brilliant in its simplicity. Baker will resume her performance career, conducting a tour of neutral Portugal and then North Africa. This provides perfect operational cover. She's traveling as an entertainer, completely legitimate, with trunks full of costumes and equipment. Hidden within those trunks will be French intelligence documents, photographs of German troop movements, and classified military information that needs to reach Free French forces. November 24th, 1940. Baker crosses into Spain at Puigcerdá, accompanied by Apte posing as her secretary. Spanish border guards see the famous Josephine Baker and swarm for autographs. While signing photos and chatting with starstruck officials, her massive trunks pass through customs without inspection. Who would search the most photographed woman in the world? The very idea seems absurd. "It's so practical to be Josephine Baker," she later remarks. They reach Lisbon, Portugal's capital, and wartime neutral zone, crawling with spies from every nation. Baker performs at clubs and theatres, while Apte makes contact with British intelligence officers operating under diplomatic cover. Information hidden in Baker's costumes and sheet music flows to MI6 station chief in Lisbon. Strategic intelligence about German positions in occupied France, defense installations, troop movements, all carried by an entertainer in sequined gowns. From Lisbon, Baker and Apte travel to Morocco, French colonial territory in North Africa. Casablanca becomes their base of operations. On the surface, Baker is performing for Allied troops, boosting morale. In reality, she's conducting intelligence operations across North Africa, coordinating between Free French forces, British intelligence, and American observers. Her performances provide cover for intelligence work that's becoming increasingly sophisticated and dangerous. Baker performs in Algiers, Tunis, Cairo. At each stop, she gathers intelligence on local political sentiments, German activity, Italian colonial forces, and Vichy French military positions. She writes reports in invisible ink on her sheet music. She photographs documents using a miniature camera hidden in her compact. She memorizes conversations overheard at diplomatic receptions, where officials compete to meet the famous Josephine Baker. But the work is taking a terrible toll. In June 1941, while performing in Morocco, Baker collapses on stage. Doctors diagnose peritonitis and septicemia, blood poisoning from a ruptured appendix. She needs immediate surgery. The operation saves her life, but leaves her gravely weakened. She spends 18 months in hospitals and recovery centers across North Africa, hovering between life and death multiple times. Even hospitalized, Baker continues intelligence work. Apte visits her bedside with military officers who need information about conditions in occupied France. Baker briefs them from her hospital bed, providing detailed intelligence on German defensive positions, collaborationist activities, and resistance networks. When doctors insist she needs complete rest, she ignores them. France needs her, and she will not stop working. Her illness becomes international news. Newspapers report that Josephine Baker is dying. German propaganda celebrates, claiming the degenerate American Negro is getting what she deserves. But Baker stubbornly refuses to die. By early 1943, she's recovered enough to resume limited performances, though she's lost tremendous weight and her health will never fully return. October 1942. Allied forces are planning Operation Torch, the invasion of North Africa. American and British forces will land in Morocco and Algeria, attacking Vichy French positions to secure North African territory before advancing into Europe. The operation requires detailed intelligence on Vichy French military capabilities, coastal defenses, and likely resistance to Allied landings. Baker has spent 2 years gathering exactly this information. Intelligence she collected about Moroccan and Algerian ports, airfields, troop strengths, and political attitudes flows through French and British channels to American commanders planning the invasion. Her reports on which Vichy French officers might be persuaded to join the Allies and which will fight to the death prove critically accurate. When American forces land on November 8, 1942, they benefit directly from intelligence Josephine Baker helped gather. After Operation Torch succeeds, Baker becomes even more active. She travels with Free French forces across North Africa, performing for troops while continuing intelligence coordination. She's officially commissioned as a sub-lieutenant in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, making her intelligence work formally recognized by military authorities. She wears her uniform with fierce pride, this black American woman serving France as an officer and spy. She witnesses the liberation of Tunis in May 1943. She performs in newly liberated Italian territories. She travels through Egypt, Syria, and Lebanon, always gathering intelligence, always reporting to her handlers. Her performances raise millions of francs for Free French forces. She sells her jewelry to help refugees. She exhausts herself completely in service to France, never asking for payment or recognition. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Allied forces invade Normandy. Baker is in Morocco preparing to perform for American troops when she hears the news. Liberation of France has begun. By August, Paris is free. In August 1946, the French government awards Josephine Baker the Medal of the Resistance with Rosette and the Croix de Guerre. In 1957, she receives the Legion of Honor, France's highest civilian decoration. The citations specifically mention her intelligence work, her courage, and her selfless service. But many operational details remain classified. French secrecy laws protecting intelligence agents are far more stringent than those covering resistance fighters. She returns to America for performances, but experiences the same racism that drove her away decades earlier. Hotels refuse her rooms. Restaurants deny her service. The wounds of American racism never healed, and Baker makes clear she considers France her true home. "I was a devil in my own country," she says, "and an angel in Paris. Where would you rather be?" Financial difficulties plague her later years. She's raised and spent fortunes on humanitarian causes and her Rainbow tribe. In the early 1970s, she faces losing her Château. Princess Grace of Monaco, a longtime friend, provides a villa in Roquebrune where Baker lives her final years. She performs occasionally, always donating proceeds to charity. Her health, never fully recovered from wartime illness, continues deteriorating. April 10, 1975. Josephine Baker performs at the Bobino Theatre in Paris, celebrating 50 years since her arrival in France. The show is a triumph. Critics call it magnificent. Baker, at 68 years old, still commands the stage with grace and power. After the performance, she returns to her Paris apartment. On April 12th, she suffers a cerebral hemorrhage. She dies that afternoon, surrounded by newspapers praising her Bobino performance. France mourns. Over 20,000 people line the streets for her funeral. She receives full military honors, the first American woman and the first black woman accorded such recognition by the French military. Soldiers fire a 21-gun salute. Her casket, draped in the French flag, is carried through Paris streets while crowds weep. She's buried in Monaco next to her adopted children. The declassified documents reveal that Baker operated across multiple intelligence networks simultaneously. She reported to French military intelligence, British MI6, and American OSS, the predecessor to the CIA. She wasn't just collecting information, she was helping coordinate Allied intelligence operations across Europe and North Africa. Her role was far more significant than anyone outside classified circles knew. CIA official history acknowledges her contribution. She charmed and flattered guests, all the while collecting secrets on enemy troop movements and the harbors and airfields used by the Axis powers. These secrets flowed through multiple intelligence channels to support Allied operations across multiple theaters. Modern intelligence scholars classify Baker as one of World War II's most effective intelligence assets, precisely because nobody suspected her. November 30, 2021. 76 years after war's end and 46 years after Baker's death, France accords her its highest honor. Josephine Baker becomes the first black woman and only the sixth woman inducted into the Pantheon, France's monument to its greatest heroes. Among the nation's most revered figures, Baker takes her place as both artist and warrior, entertainer and spy, American-born and profoundly French. President Emmanuel Macron's tribute acknowledges both her artistic legacy and wartime heroism, calling her a war hero, fighter in the resistance, active in the civil rights movement, a woman who was black, who was emancipated. The tribute continues. She chose France, and France chose her that day. The Pantheon ceremony sparks renewed interest in Baker's intelligence work, prompting publication of new scholarship and fuller documentation. At the heart of Baker's effectiveness as an intelligence operative was a paradox. She succeeded because she was too famous to be a spy. Her celebrity status, rather than hindering intelligence work, provided the perfect operational cover. Who would suspect the glamorous entertainer of espionage? Who would dare search the most photographed woman in the world? Baker understood this intuitively and exploited it masterfully. She traveled with voluminous luggage stuffed with costumes, makeup, and musical scores, perfect camouflage for hidden intelligence. She created chaos at border crossings where guards sought autographs rather than contraband. She attended diplomatic parties where officials competed to meet famous Josephine Baker, never imagining she was memorizing conversations about troop movements and military installations. Her celebrity was her disguise. The entertainment and the intelligence work form two inseparable aspects of Baker's wartime service. Her performances provided cover for espionage, while her espionage gave deeper purpose to her performances. Both expressed her fundamental commitment, gratitude to France and violent opposition to fascist racism. She could not separate the artist from the warrior, because both fought the same battle against discrimination and oppression. What made Baker exceptional wasn't just courage, though she possessed extraordinary bravery. It wasn't just intelligence tradecraft, though she mastered it brilliantly. What made her remarkable was understanding exactly what she was fighting for. As a black woman who experienced American racism and French freedom, Baker knew intimately what was at stake in World War II. The fight against fascist racism wasn't abstract politics, it was personal survival. The Nazis represented everything that had oppressed her in America, multiplied and weaponized. Systematic racism codified into law, hatred of diversity celebrated as national policy, the elimination of anyone different designated as state purpose. If Nazi ideology triumphed, people like Josephine Baker would not exist. She fought with the desperation of someone who knew that losing meant erasure. Her intelligence work was survival made strategic. Through it all, Baker maintained what French military citizens repeatedly praised as remarkable courage and sang-froid, cool-headedness under pressure. Colonel Paul Payol, head of French counterintelligence, assessed her simply. Josephine was steel. That assessment captured the essence of a woman who danced through war, carrying secrets in her sheet music and courage in her soul, never wavering in devotion to freedom. Baker's contribution extends beyond any single piece of intelligence or specific operation. She established crucial communication networks between fragmented French resistance, British intelligence, and American forces. She provided pre-war intelligence on Axis alliance formation. She delivered strategic intelligence for Operation Torch. She helped coordinate diverse groups across North Africa. She served as symbol of resistance for thousands of Allied troops who watched her perform in uniform. Her wartime service embodied the fundamental struggle of World War II, the fight against fascist racism, totalitarianism, and oppression. As a black woman who found freedom in France only to see that freedom threatened by Nazi ideology, Baker fought with unique understanding of what was at stake. Her intelligence work and her later civil rights activism formed one continuous battle against discrimination in all its forms. In truth, France and Josephine Baker chose each other twice. First in 1925 when she arrived in Paris seeking artistic freedom. again in September 1939 when she raised her champagne glass and declared, "To France." Between those moments and throughout the war that followed, Josephine Baker gave France everything she had: her talent, her fortune, her health, and nearly her life. In return, France gave her what she had sought from childhood: recognition as a complete human being, capable of both art and heroism, entertainment and espionage, glamour and courage. The intelligence she gathered contributed to Allied victory. The example she set continues to inspire. Modern historians studying World War II intelligence operations increasingly recognize that some of the most effective spies were those nobody suspected: the cook who solved convoy detection, the pilot who redesigned carrier decks, the entertainer who smuggled secrets. What all these unlikely heroes share is the willingness to see problems differently and the courage to act when others hesitated. Josephine Baker looked at her fame and saw not just celebrity, but camouflage. She looked at her gratitude to France and saw not just sentiment, but obligation. She looked at Nazi racism and saw not just ideology, but existential threat. And she acted with a clarity that defined her generation. Today, when you see photographs of Josephine Baker in her banana skirt, dancing at the Folies Bergère with her trademark smile and boundless energy, remember that the same woman who made Paris laugh carried secrets that helped win the war. The sequined costumes hid more than skin. They concealed documents photographing German defenses and reports on Vichy French positions. Every performance was both entertainment and cover. Every smile was both genuine and strategic. Her story remained partially hidden for 75 years, protected by the same secrecy laws that shielded other intelligence operatives. Only now, with archives declassified and the full documentation available, can we understand the true scope of her contribution. Not just an entertainer who happened to spy, an intelligence operative who happened to be the most famous woman in the world. The difference matters because it reveals Baker's genius. She didn't become a spy despite her fame. She became a spy because of her fame, weaponizing celebrity as intelligence asset in ways that still inform modern tradecraft. The lesson transcends World War II. Some of the most powerful tools in any struggle are hiding in plain sight, disguised as something unimportant or frivolous. The challenge is recognizing them and having the courage to use them. Josephine Baker did both brilliantly.